Hello, I'm going to be talking about the director's cut of Napoleon. Napoleon was originally released at the cinemas in 2023, directed by Ridley Scott, starring Joaquin Phoenix, Vanessa Kirby, Taha Rahim. And I was underwhelmed by the film. The director's cut was released onto Apple TV Plus, and this is a big improvement. So I want to talk about in this video the director's cut of Napoleon rather than the theatrical release cut. The director's cut is 48 more minutes. It's nearly 3.5 hours long and is better for it. Like Ridley Scott's Kingdom of Heaven, if you've seen neither, go straight to the director's cut of both versions of the film. The extended versions are superior, so much so you never need to sit through the original cuts, the original cinema release cuts of the films. So for both Kingdom of Heaven and Napoleon. Napoleon, the director's cut, has more story, more character work, more history, but there's still not enough characterization, still not enough story and history, but I felt less shortchanged with the director's cut than I did with the original version. Like Martin Scorsese's Killers of the Flower Moon, Napoleon should have been a miniseries. There's too much history for one movie, for both those films. By the way, I strongly recommend reading the source book for Killers of the Flower Moon by David Gran. Back to Napoleon director's cut. It benefits from being a more adult-oriented film. You know, there's more sex, more violence, more nudity. For those who enjoy watching historical excesses, it's not, it's not Caligula or anything like that. But how should I say it? The more adult-oriented version feels more appropriate to the subject. Ridley Scott. His team are impressive. He and his creative team when it comes to orchestrating battles. Remember Gladiator, the opening? Wow, even now, sort of 25 years on, the opening to Gladiator still astounds. And Napoleon, then Gladiator 2 from last year. Both are disappointing films, I feel. But the sporadic combat sequences in the films, there's much to admire in them. Still, the director's cut of Napoleon doesn't delve into what made Napoleon such a formidable military tactician. I would have loved to have sort of had a theory from the filmmakers as to why he was so good. Some insight. It would have been, I think I would have liked the film more with some more substance. The film seems to be more interested in the relationship between Napoleon and his wife Josephine. Perhaps audiences would have been more satisfied if their expectations had been modified by changing the title instead to Napoleon and Josephine. I think maybe the film would have been looked down on less. It might have been viewed differently with this different title. Perhaps it would have been Napoleon would have been seen as an unexpected take. An epic historical love story, maybe not, though, as neither of these two historical figures, Napoleon and Josephine, are delved into with enough depth, unfortunately. There's also not enough context, as I mentioned earlier, to do with his military tactics, but also history. There's just not enough context in the film. If you want to contrast, say, I would also advise checking out the film Chevalier from 2022, and you'll see what I mean about this film, Napoleon, why I feel it lacks context. So check out Chevalier, for example, and also I recommend reading the book Josephine, Desire, Ambition, Napoleon by Kate Williams. That's a really interesting historical work about the era from the perspective of Josephine. And back to the film, back to the Napoleon. Even with the director's cut, the movie portrays Napoleon at times as laughable. Indignities are laid on him. We see him, suffering from piles. We see him on Napoleon on the toilet. I was wondering, were the creative team, aiming to belittle Napoleon, or were they trying to humanize him? He's a human being, not just this glorious, legend from history, or belittling, humanizing, or both. I wonder. I would love to know that. We also see Napoleon's rise to his ascension to emperor is pretty cursory as to how he becomes emperor. That's not looked into with a lot of depth either, unfortunately. He was the most powerful man in Europe. When a person tastes such power, how is that power clung to? The film, again, doesn't look at that. The film doesn't offer theories, really, or sage insight into Napoleon's character and his rise. And even with the extended runtime, Napoleon, the director's cut, feels confused. I was wondering, what is the film trying to achieve? What was it trying to say? How do the creatives want the audiences to feel about Napoleon? Do they want to feel pity for him, admiration, disdain? I'm a bit confused as to what the film was trying to achieve, unfortunately. I went to lectures at a cinema centre a long time ago about the two of director Stanley Kubrick's unfinished films, one of which was going to be a Napoleon project, and one can only imagine how stupendous a film that might have been. That's one for the sort of what ifs. If you want to watch better movies than Napoleon, I'd advise checking out actually Ridley Scott's directorial debut from 1977, The Duelists. That's a really good film. Also, Stanley Kubrick, check out his Barry Lyndon, one of the most beautiful looking movies ever made. That's Barry Lyndon. Also, if you were interested in sort of biopics that feel monumental and substantial, check out Martin Scorsese's Raging Bull about boxer Jake LaMotta, Lawrence of Arabia on T.E. Lawrence, and I'm Not There about singer Bob Dylan. Also, check out, I advise watching Oliver Stone's Alexander, his director's cut about Alexander the Great. Another version that's far superior to the theatrical cinema release. So yeah, check out those films I mentioned. Hope you enjoy those. And if you enjoyed my review, please feel free to subscribe to my channel and like the video.